Of all the misreadings of Viktor Frankl, the most common is this, that his emphasis on accepting unavoidable suffering means accepting whatever happens, passively, without resistance. This misreading matters because it inverts his meaning entirely. Frankl was not a quietist. He was not advocating for passivity, or for learned helplessness dressed in philosophical language. He made a precise distinction, one that is easy to state and difficult to live. There is suffering that can be changed, and suffering that cannot. The first requires action. The second requires something more demanding than action. It requires the transformation of one's attitude toward it. He called this the third pathway to meaning, after creative values, what we give to the world, and experimental values, what we receive from it. Attitudinal values are realized through the stance we take toward unavoidable suffering, and Frankl was emphatic that this is not a lesser pathway. In many cases, he believed it was the highest. The distinction he drew was between fate and choice. Certain things that happen to us are not within our power to prevent: illness, loss, aging, death, the choices of others that affect us deeply. To spend energy fighting what cannot be changed is not courage. It is a failure of clear perception, and it wastes the resource that could be directed toward what can actually be transformed. But within even the most constrained circumstances, Frankl argued, one freedom remains: the freedom to choose our attitude. He was not speaking abstractly. He tested this proposition in conditions designed to extinguish it. In the concentration camps, where every external freedom had been stripped away, he observed that some prisoners maintained what he could only describe as inner dignity, a way of meeting their situation that, whatever it could not change about the situation, preserved something essential about the person. He was not romanticizing this. Many of these same prisoners died. But they died, in Frankl's observation, differently, as people who had remained, in some irreducible way, themselves. The confusion between acceptance and resignation stems from a failure to see that attitudinal change is an act. It is not the absence of action. It is the most internal and, in some contexts, the most demanding action available. Transforming one's stance toward grief, toward permanent disability, toward irreversible loss, toward the unchangeable past, this requires more from a person than most external challenges do. It requires confronting what is real, surrendering the fantasy of what might have been, and finding in the actual situation something that can be met with meaning rather than with bitterness. Frankl worked with patients who had received terminal diagnoses, who had lost children, who were living with conditions that would never improve. With these patients, the question of change was settled. The only open question was, what will be the quality of what remains? The quality of the time left, of the relationships that continued, of the internal experience of a life that was not going to be what it might have been. He found that patients who could move through grief and loss toward genuine acceptance, not performance of acceptance, not suppression of pain, but actual orientation toward the reality of their situation, reported something surprising, not happiness, but meaning. And meaning, Frankl insisted, is compatible with suffering in a way that happiness is not. You can suffer terribly and still find your life meaningful. The two are not in conflict. The practical test of this distinction is straightforward. Am I accepting this because I have genuinely assessed that it cannot be changed, or because I am avoiding the effort required to change it? Acceptance of the first kind is a form of wisdom. Acceptance of the second kind is resignation, and Frankl had no interest in it. The difference is visible in the person. Someone who has genuinely accepted an unavoidable loss moves through life with a particular kind of steadiness, not numbness, but groundedness. Someone who has resigned themselves to something that could have been changed carries a quiet defeat that affects everything. Frankl's challenge is not to accept everything. It is to be honest about what is actually in our power, and to bring our full inner resources to bear on both categories, changing what can be changed, and transforming our relationship to what cannot. Subscribe to The Psychology of Viktor Frankl to explore more of his timeless ideas.